I am very excited to introduce my lovely guests today. One is my sweet daughter, Hannah, and her very good friend and former roommate, Caitlyn. I'm so excited to have you both on. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So let me start. Why don't you both share a little bit about yourselves? Why don't we start with Hannah and then Caitlyn? Share a little bit about who you are, what you're doing now, just a little sketch.
Okay, so I'm Hannah and I am living in Utah right now with my husband. We've been married for about 2.5 years. I am in my last year of college at BYU, and then I'm applying to medical school, hoping to attend in 2025. The youngest of 4, and I have a cute little dog, and I'm just enjoying life, working and going to school. Very, very busy, but very, very happy.
Thank you, Hannah.
And I'm Caitlyn. I am also living in Utah. I'm also a senior at BYU. I'll be graduating in April. And then in May, I'm getting married. And
Yay!
So I'm super excited about that. And then after we get married, we'll be moving to Maine. So lots of exciting changes, lots of adventure coming up. And I am so ready for that to happen.
That's wonderful. That is wonderful. Okay, and girls, just share with us how you guys met and became friends.
We were freshmen at BYU, and it was a random roommate selection. So you have the option to either choose your roommates or they can be totally random. And so we both took the plunge for a random roommate. We ended up living with 4 other girls in the dorms, and we became best friends, I'd say probably instantly.
I thought we were close because like they're supposed to pair you based off your like disposition for certain things, and we were like the grandmas of the apartment because we liked our sleep and we would go to bed before midnight, and we were both, dedicated students. And then so I moved out after our first semester because I went on a proselyting mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And then I think Hannah did the same thing a little later, but I'm a little older than her. And so, and then after our missions, we got in touch again and decided to be roommates again. And it was so fun. So yeah, like we got used to each other and we were like, it was good last time, so let's do this again.
And we'd even roll out of bed with our almost matching robes,
That's true, actually. Yeah.
We were definitely grandmas. We were the only ones that studied, it felt like.
Yeah. But it worked out. We're seniors. We're gonna graduate, so
yeah,
that's good.
Now, from the mom perspective, I was super nervous that Hannah would have a good roommate because I wanted her to have a good experience her first year at college, and you, Caitlyn, had moved in first, I think, because your bed was all pink and the room was all pink.
Yes, I'm like, blonde hair, Barbie. I embrace it. I really do like pink, but yeah.
I felt like I had to have a blue landscape because it was so pink in there, and I'm the brunette.
Probably traumatized Hannah. Yeah.
Just gold and pink everywhere. So I had the most boring blue cover and nothing to decorate it.
We got you a sloth blanket.
So. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I remember my first impression of Hannah was like, oh my gosh, because I called her like a mad scientist sometimes because she would like fill her side of the room with like note cards and like just studying things, and she would like kind of pace back and forth repeating things to herself while she was studying, and then like write it down and then do it again, and then she would like come out of this trance and be like, I get it. And I'd be like, that was the most fascinating thing to watch. Like I just, because I was a BYU student, had no idea what I was majoring in. And Hannah had like her like 15-year plan, like ready to be like a brain surgeon or a cancer doctor. I don't know what the goal was at that moment, but she always knew she wanted to be a doctor and she was going to get there, dang it. And I was just like, my plan was to get here, and to figure it out. I thought I was being advanced and on top of things, but Hannah's just has this drive that's absolutely incredible.
So that's an interesting.
It's so funny that you say that, because my first impression of Caitlyn was, I think this is the smartest person I've ever met in my life. She uses big words and she talks about really important things. And it seemed like we'd have boys over from, wherever that the other girls found them from. And we never found them. But they'd bring them over, and the whole time I would just watch them be mesmerized by Caitlyn. And she just has this energy and this intelligence that you just can't ignore.
Oh, thank you.
Well, it's fun because obviously you weren't like the same person. You had some things in common, but maybe it's just your respect for each other that developed this great friendship that you
I think that's very true. I think Hannah and I both saw worth and strength in each other, and we respected things about each other, but I would say like we're not the same in a lot of ways, but we both value each other for sure.
And I think we value talking about important things. That's something that we've always been able to connect on, is talking about things that maybe not everyone is willing to talk about. And that's always been the foundation, I think, of our friendship.
That's true. Like we like the intellectual, but also like spiritual and emotional wrestle. Like, and we like to share in that because we do see the complexities in different things. And we also value, I think, like Hannah, I know I can depend on, and I know she's doing the right thing wherever she is. Like I just know she's true and blue. I don't know how else to phrase that, but Hannah has integrity and character, and I love that she isn't going to like people please. Does that make sense? Like she's going to speak honestly and genuinely from the heart. And so having a friend like that is also very important because you are being friends. Like they're not putting on a face just to please you or just to give you a sounding board. Like they are themselves. I hope that made sense.
That's really wonderful. And what that makes me think of is that the pairing of you two together wasn't an accident or a coincidence, because what you're saying about each other, the integrity, the honesty, the dependability, was going to carry you both through some unexpected, really difficult experiences that you couldn't have known as freshmen were going to be coming in just a few years' time. So let's go to that. Caitlyn, why don't you start? Tell us about the person you lost. Just tell us about your mom.
Okay. So yeah, my mom, Lisa, it's so hard. I'm sure everyone says this. It's hard to just summarize your person into words, but she was my mom. I was very close to my mom, just because, again, I think Hannah and I just have old souls, and I can't speak for Hannah, but for me, it was hard to like connect with people my age, and my mom saw that. Because, I did like to talk about important things. I had a long-term perspective on a lot of things. I really craved to learn, like, not just in school, but like about the gospel and stuff. And that wasn't necessarily the most popular thing. But my mom, she was a convert to the church. She was a teacher. She taught 3rd grade, 4th grade, some junior high throughout her life. She could be friends with anyone. Like we would go to the store and she would strike up a conversation with whoever was in line. like she always taught me to like look out for people, to look out for those who needed help. Like every time there was an old person unloading their car in the grocery store parking lot, she would always stop and ask if they needed help, or ask if, like, she was just always on the lookout. And she always said, like, because she was a convert, that she didn't know the gospel well. Like she didn't know the scripture story. She wasn't as smart as my dad was, but I truly felt like she lived Christianity. She was always welcoming, always like willing to learn from people, super funny, like had no filter whatsoever. So like her mad ADHD brain or whatever would like just like spitball the most sometimes outrageous things. But like you just always knew she was coming from a place of love. So whenever we would get in like, a heated argument or a disagreement, my mom was always really quick to forgive and just let it roll off your back and like keep going, because we always knew it was coming from a place of love. And always had a lot of energy, was always social. So when she got sick, we didn't know it, but so she passed away from pancreatic cancer, but we didn't know that from the very end, the pathology reports and everything. So when she got sick, it was weird. And because she didn't have a lot of energy, she was in a lot of pain. She didn't have her normal disposition. And I think when you go through losing someone who's through an illness and you see that separation happen, your grieving process starts a little early because you're losing that relationship. Of course, we didn't know it was cancer until like she was diagnosed the beginning of November, and she passed away in the middle of December. And so we just thought she had a pinched nerve, and nothing picked up no tests were it's just the doctors didn't pick up anything until it was already at stage 4. Very aggressive, came out of nowhere. Like we just thought she had a really bad pinched nerve and she was a little tired, but she knew something was wrong, and she kept advocating for herself to see more doctors, get more tests done. And she passed away rather quickly. And so there was a little bit of like mourning that relationship with my mom, because I went from talking to her at least once a week or having her updated on my life to like just kind of being alone. And then when she passed, that was obviously a whole other level. But yeah, my mom, she was awesome, and she still is awesome. That was Lisa.
Thanks, Caitlyn. And I'll just say I met your mom and dad, of course, when you girls moved in together, and then your mom and I, we were the ones doing all this research to try to find you guys an apartment where you could be together, because you were both on your missions at the same time. And I remember your mom. We found a place that seemed perfect, and your mom said, "Oh, Barrett thinks it's too expensive, but we're going to do it anyway."
Yeah, my mom, she would go to bat for all of her kids. Big mama bear.
I can say your mom was super spunky, super fun.
Oh, yeah.
Just adored her kids, right?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
All right. Okay, so that's Lisa. Hannah, tell us about your dad.
So my dad, I think that I learned more about who he was and what he did for me when he passed away than I even knew when he was alive. Just the kindest, most sincere man. I think that everyone who interacted with him just felt a very, very pure sense of love from him. He had very kind eyes. He was extremely intelligent, very successful doctor, and he was always one to foster that love inside of me. I remember telling him, "Dad, I want to do what you do. I think I can do it, but I'm scared. I don't know if I'm smart enough." And, he always told me that I could do it. He always believed in me. And I just always wanted to walk in his footsteps. And we had a very close and special bond. When I lost him, it was a super actually exciting part in my life because I had just gotten engaged, and Caitlyn said, do you want to have your nails done for the engagement? Do you want to have your nails done? And I thought, no, I don't need to get my nails done. That's so extra. And then she ended up finding out the day when it was going to happen. And of course, that's the day that I changed my mind. I said, I want my nails done for my engagement. And so she's like, Hannah, we have to go get your nails done today. We don't have a choice. Come on. And so we got our nails done together. And then later that night, I got engaged, and it was so exciting. And then about a week and a half later, my dad passed away super suddenly in the middle of the night. And I was woken up at like 4:00 in the morning, and I thought I had slept in. And so I said, hi, how are you? Sorry. And it was my neighbor. And he said, Hannah, your dad passed away last night, and we have a flight for you to come to Spokane to be with your mom. Preston's already there at your door. He's with you. And he had called Preston first so that he'd be there when I found out. And then Preston quit his job, my husband now, and moved to Spokane so that he could take care of the family for the summer. And it was just a roller coaster. I mean, I could not believe the amount of pain that I was experiencing. My emotions had just taken a complete 180. I mean, it was like, this is going to be the best summer ever. I'm engaged, I'm getting married, and he's such a wonderful guy. And then it turned into, this is the darkest time in my life, and so much confusion. Am I doing the right thing? What's happening to me? Am I going to be okay? I think that I learned that your father gives you a sense of strength and security. And when I lost him, I lost that. I mean, I just didn't feel secure about anything. I didn't feel sure of anything. There was no one to say, hey, Dad, can you check this out? Or, Dad, what do I do? And so I miss him every day. I really do. And he's just the most wonderful man. I love him.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, both of you. And of course, your dad was my husband, and I agree with everything you said. Really, really wonderful man. So backing up, Hannah's dad passed away in May, and you two were still roommates at that time. And
Yes.
then Caitlyn, your mother, then passed away in December of that year. And by that point, Hannah was married and you weren't roommates anymore. So let's go back. So Hannah, you shared about that, those early experiences. How was Caitlyn a support to you at that time, right after your dad passed away?
So I was really struggling that summer. I didn't just lose my dad. I actually had alopecia. I developed that over that summer, and I lost about 50% of my hair. And so I just didn't even want a wedding plan. It didn't feel like a happy day. It didn't feel like something to look forward to. It felt like my dad's not even going to be there. I'm a mess every day. I'm unsure of how the future is going to fold out or turn out. But I remember Caitlyn just reaching out to me and saying, normally people have bachelorette parties. Where are you at right now? Like, just be honest with me, because she knew me and she knew that the last thing I wanted to do was have a big party and have people ask questions. That's really not what I wanted. And so she said, just you tell me what you need and I'll provide it. Like, I'll get it for you. You don't have to do anything. And so I said, I just want to sit in a circle with some of my best friends and talk about happy things. So she planned the most beautiful little bachelorette party with just the people that I wanted to be with. And it was just a really fun, beautiful experience. And I also remember, like 2 weeks after he passed away, I had to go to Utah for just a couple of days to pick up some stuff. And I remember that I was having a hard time keeping it together. And Caitlyn brought me into our bedroom and we sat on the floor and I just cried and told her, Caitlyn, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I can't believe this happened to me. It doesn't feel real. I just remember her kind of saying, Hannah, you still have a little light in your eyes. And I know you don't believe me, but it's there. And that's why I know you're going to be okay. And I was like, I don't understand what she's talking about. None of that feels real. I don't feel like I'm going to be okay. But I also knew that Caitlyn was one of those people in the world that I trusted the most. I mean, everything that she said to me, I would believe. And she wasn't just saying it, she really knew me. And she knew I was going to be okay. And so just her guiding hand through all of that and just providing what I needed, even if it wasn't, something that she could predict, just being able to say, what do you need? I know you, I love you, and you're going to be okay.
That's amazing. That is amazing. So, Caitlyn, how did you even know to approach Hannah in this way? Can you speak to that at all?
I again, like, I don't know, something I learned from my mom is that, like, like I talked earlier, is to like look out for those people who are struggling, look out for those people who need help, who need a lift. And I think, I think life's a teacher. And I know in those moments there are times where you wish someone would just come in and just take a load off your plate, like take some weight off your back, walk with you. In the scriptures we hear, mourn with those who mourn, but also just try to go through the motions of life, try to celebrate, and I knew Hannah, and I knew any girl that is in our position wants normalcy, wants to look back and know that they haven't missed out. And so I think I was close enough to Hannah to approach her about, like, wedding stuff, and to talk to her about that. We were, I was with her through that whole dating process, and all the excitement and all the questions about, like, what should I do? What should I do about this? Like, while her brain was still there. And so I think just being like, okay, like, yeah, a lot hasn't gone how we expected, but let's see what we can still do. And so, and I think, yeah, doing that little bridal party was really sweet, and just wanted Hannah to feel supported and loved and looked after going through such a hard thing. And then I honestly don't remember that conversation that Hannah talked about sitting on the floor. I know there were many conversations, and so attributing to, like, people worry about saying the perfect thing, and I think recognizing that, we've said this a lot, but knowing that everyone's grief is different, and being open to the Spirit, because the Lord knows where they're at and knows what they need to hear. And just being able to sit on the ground and talk about it. And Hannah does have light in her eyes. I'm not going to deny that. She has, again, that spirit of resiliency. The Lord loves her. And I knew that he was going to take care of her. And so.
Well, and also, Caitlyn, I think you bring up a good point, because it wasn't the words that you said. It was that feeling of that I had your absolute 100% presence, because, you put everything away. You brought me aside. And this happened over and over again, just you being 100% present. It was never anything that someone said. There's nothing that you can say to fix the pain, but you can just kind of clothe someone in that love, just even if it's for a second.
I agree. I think having that 100% presence, like putting away distractions, sitting down with someone, looking them in their eyes, or putting your arm around them and just being there in it, it's very uncomfortable for some people. And I will acknowledge that, because they want to say the right thing. They want to fix it. They want to say, don't be sad. Like, let's focus on all that's going right, but for some moments, we just need someone to just sit with us and be there.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think it's remarkable to do that when you are a young adult in school, you know, that your time feels so stretched anyway, right? You're constantly worried about tests or assignments or requirements, and to be able to give somebody the gift of your full attention is really quite remarkable. So Hannah got
Homework will
married.
always be there. Sorry. Yeah, homework will always be there. Your relationships are the most important, in my opinion. So anyway, continue.
I
Sorry.
agree. No, I agree. And I think that's one, I think that's one, that's the message I'm getting from both of you is how special the relationship is. And I think because you nurtured it over these years, you know, you may have thought you were being there for each other in the worst time when a breakup happened or a test bombed or, you know, hard things, but maybe being there for each other in those lesser moments made it possible for you to be there for each other in these apex moments.
Yeah, we had a lot of practice. I mean, we went through a lot of heartbreaks together and a lot of hard times. And so I felt familiar with the feeling of love, and it just came back. And that's all that needed to happen, is I just needed to feel that love just one more time.
Right, right. So then going forward, like I said, Hannah got married in August. The new semester starts.
Mm-hmm.
Lisa's having back pain, but she's not actively, you know, in her demise as far as you know. But then she gets sick. It was really hard. How did you manage that time, Caitlyn?
That was an interesting time for just me personally, because I was dating this boy and we were talking about potentially getting married, student at BYU. And when I remember I came out of so I was in the middle of communicating with this boy of if we were going to get back together or not, because we had broken up. And then I went to the testing center, so already high stress. And then I came out of the testing center and that boy was there. And I got a phone call from my dad saying, your mom was diagnosed with cancer. And it's not looking great. Like, at that point, they didn't realize, but it was everywhere. And I just got this overall impression that I needed to go home. Like, because my dad was a bishop, he was a newly called bishop. So he was only in that calling for a few months. And I had younger siblings at home that relied on having at least one parent actively there. And so I just remember I kind of like almost collapsed because I was just so exhausted already emotionally at that point. Like it just felt like, oh my gosh, now there's this other thing coming on. And I will always be grateful for that boy's family. He is not who I am engaged to now. But that's another story. But I will be very grateful for his family because his dad just so happened to be driving through Vegas to another destination. And so he knew that they knew I felt like I needed to go home and I needed to support my family. And so he was willing to give me a ride and I was willing to be there within 24 hours. Mm-hmm. And my dad is a natural optimist. And he was like, no, you don't have to do that. Like, we're going to figure it out. It's going to be fine. And I said, Dad, I'm not coming home because I feel like mom's going to die. I am coming home because you need help and I'm able to help you. And I just remember my dad doesn't cry, but I remember my dad got choked up and he said, I really need that, Caitlyn. Thank you. And so I came home. I emailed all my TAs and all my professors. That is my one advice if you are a student going through grief is like keep your TAs and your teachers in the loop, because one of my siblings did not because they didn't feel the need to, and their school was so much harder. But my professors, I just kept them updated, like I found out like my mom was diagnosed with cancer. She's going to the hospital. My dad needs help. Like, this is what I can do. Like, as far as assignments go, please help. And then I think it was after my mom passed away, because it all happened so fast, that I was able to go to the accommodations office. And like, you can just ask for like bare minimum. Not, they like give you suggestions on like what you can apply for. And so for me, they were like, okay, like, we'll give you flexible attendance and like
Extensions
flexible
on
and
assignments.
extensions to a certain extent. And they even said like something like you can get like a special room in the testing center. I never used that, but like they're willing to work with you. And so just be really on top of communicating. So then if things do escalate, like in my case, they did, it doesn't come out of nowhere and your grades don't suffer more than they need to. When I went home, I had a little sister who was in junior high. So she was like 12, I think, at the time, maybe 13. And like I kind of played mom, and it was helpful to be there for my dad because everyone wanted to have an update. Everyone wanted to talk to him. And I found through my aunt this website, I think it's called Caring Bridge, and it basically allows you to post your updates and it will send out a mass message to everyone who like subscribes to it. And so you can keep everyone updated at the same time. So like I would just write out a little message on like what's going on, how my mom was doing, how we're doing. And then it would just go out because it was almost overwhelming because, you know, a lot of people who are loved ones of you or my mom, they just wanted to be in the loop and they wanted to know how they could help. And Caring Bridge, I sound like I'm an advertisement. It just allowed people to be in the know, but also I think there's features on there that allow you to like sign up for meals or like sign up for like pickup if there were kids, you know? And we didn't use that, but it really helped take a load off my plate as someone who was like looking after my siblings, doing the laundry, trying to communicate with our board or family and friends, like just to allow there to be that and then have like my main 2 point people. And so
it's interesting. So yeah, you bring up Caring Bridge, and others have brought that up as well, which is a resource for people who are accompanying somebody through an illness, right?
mm-hmm.
So, and not everybody's aware that a college has an accommodations office. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's a really good point. So now taking the flip side, where your mother's illness came up very suddenly and then she passed, Hannah's experience is that her dad was first got sick with something called neurosarcoidosis back when she was about 6 years old. And so, but then dad was stable, right? Until he suddenly got, things just went very fast. And then, as you said, we didn't have that whole Caring Bridge experience, did we? It was wow, you know, he's been stable for so many years. We didn't expect things to turn so quickly. So what do you do then when you have the opposite, where the event has happened and now how do you handle that with school and teachers and things like that?
Everyone wants to know how they died. Don't ask how they died. No one wants to repeat that story, no matter how it happened, a million times. I remember telling a professor in front of other students, because that's my only option, because I needed to tell him in person, hey, just so you know, my dad passed away very recently. I'm going to do the best I can. But let's work together. Please be patient with me. And immediately, oh, how did he pass away? As other students are listening to our conversation, and I am about to break down because this is maybe the 10th time that day that I've been asked that question, or something like that, or just the so many text messages are sometimes overwhelming. I loved receiving text messages that had something like, you don't have to respond to this, or I don't expect you to respond to this, or I am going to come bring you something, instead of, what do you like to eat? Or what can I do to help you? Or how are you doing? I mean, it's just, you put in so much physical energy grieving that it's like I had absolutely no room left to have those conversations. And especially because it was so suddenly. And so I just had to really quickly adapt to my new circumstances. So I was really grateful for people who are flexible and also who just took the initiative. You know, you don't have to ask what they like to eat. They need to eat, you know,
Right.
and that was really helpful.
Right.
But then at school, it was hard because I always felt like I was playing a different game than everyone else. You know, I had a hard time being honestly compassionate at first because, you know, people complain about things that are normal for them. Like, oh, I have so much homework. I'm buried. I am like surviving. And I'm thinking, I have the same amount of homework and I just lost the most important person in my world. And so I don't know how to relate to you right now. And so it was just uncomfortable. And that's just how it was. But I was just grateful for people who didn't ask a million questions and instead just provided the love, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I don't know, like, I remember people being like, how long ago did they pass away? And it was
Yeah.
and it was like, okay, so maybe, yeah, I'm still within the first year and maybe it was a few months ago, but like sometimes grief creeps up, or sometimes there's like days or holidays or just things that some days are harder than others. And yeah, I don't know. Very well put, Hannah. Very well articulated.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things I noticed too that I hadn't been aware of before is how interested people are in very personal, minute details, you know? And you're right. Sometimes you just want somebody to love you and put their arms around you, not ask you a million questions.
Yeah.
Right. And it's okay to be curious. That's normal. Just, it's not appropriate when someone's
Start
grieving.
out with that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. That's just being selfless though, right? That's, you get to sacrifice a little bit of that curiosity and you get to give love instead. That's a really good
Right.
sacrifice to get to make.
Right. So how do you handle those times when the grief comes out of nowhere? What do you do?
I think Hannah hit on this earlier. Like, I think something that surprised me genuinely was how physical grief is. Like, and I would talk to my therapist. Oh, that's another thing. Get a good, because my first therapist that I had when my mom passed away was very dismissive of my grief. And
What do
like,
you mean? Can you give an example?
yeah, he would just tell me like the stages of grief. And then he'd be like, and then you look at pictures and then you get over it. And I was like, I know. Everyone's going to be shocked by this story. But I remember going into a session and saying, you know, you keep telling me the stages of grief, but like, what do I do when I feel them? Because I feel like you just telling me the stages of grief isn't helpful. And he got mad at me, like genuinely, like, and he told me that me saying that, anyway, I don't want to throw him under the bus, but you know what it feels like when someone is being dismissive of your emotions. And so that led me to find another therapist.
Did that take some courage for you?
Yes, because it's an adult man. He was sitting in front of the door and he was mad at me. And so like, and he's like, I can't believe you said this to me. Like, and I felt like I was being very respectful.
Wow.
And I said, I didn't mean to offend you. That is not my intention, you know, and I diffused the situation, and I didn't,
But that
add
seems like
gasoline to the fire.
that seems like a lot of work that you're being asked to do as the client, right? That seems when you're going to someone to help work through this grief and then have the job of not offending them. That seems like a lot to put on somebody.
Yeah, but at that moment, the moment he said, I said, did I offend? Like, because he started getting really, he said, you've pissed me off when I said that.
Whoa.
Like he used that
Wow.
language. And so the moment that that happened, I, in my brain, knew that this was no longer an appropriate client therapist relationship and I needed to get out of the room.
Right.
But he was sitting in front of the door, he was an angry man. I was
Wow.
alone. And so you diffuse the situation.
So you give a good example of what not to look for in a therapist. Right?
Yeah. That seems
Yeah.
pretty crystal clear.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I found a new therapist and, you know, stars aligned. This therapist also, he lost his mom when he was around our age. And so he knew what that sensation felt like. And your therapist shouldn't talk more than you do. I think that's a big thing. They should let you grieve. They should let you cry. They should let you be angry. And they will help guide you, you know, through these emotions. But something I really appreciated was that he said, like, there's no shoulds. Like like, I always felt like I should have a better perspective on this, or I should be more positive, or I want to be here. I want to be back like how I was. But grief is a very physical process. And my therapist explained, like, your body has never been through this intense emotion before. And your brain and body are trying to figure it out. Because you're thrown out. And I had a professor at BYU who I really respect, really value, really trust. And he always compared it to, you just got hit by an emotional semi. And he's like, and Caitlyn is going to want to, you know, get up and be 100% because that's how we roll, you know, very dedicated student, very used to being on my A game and being ahead, if anything. And I needed to accept that, like, my timeline for school and what my success was going to look like for the day was going to be very different. Like, so like I went from taking a full class load to taking 2 classes. I did go back to school immediately because I thought it would be better for me mental health wise because I couldn't just sit in my emotions. I needed to be out of my house. I needed to pretend to have some kind of normalcy because it was either I was going to sit at home and just be consumed and just be in this empty house or where everything reminded me of my mom, or I was going to go back to school and take it really easy, you know, and go to class, eat, bathe, go to sleep.
I'm glad you shared that, Caitlyn. And so, Hannah, we didn't talk about this before, but this component of the physical effects of grief, you also have an autoimmune disease, right? Called Crohn's. And so your dad passed away suddenly. That was a big trauma. Your body reacted as well, which you already alluded to with the, you know, alopecia. And then you have this flare of the Crohn's. So in a practical way, how does somebody regain physical health after the initial grief and as they go through grief? This is something I feel like you've done a really good job with, and I'd like to know what your process was with that.
Oh man, that's such a hard question because the answer is so difficult to achieve sometimes, and that's really normal. I think that a lot of people gain weight with grief. A lot of people have physical symptoms of grief. Your body misses that person, and it just grieves that person. I think that, and it really reacts to the level of emotion that you have to experience, like Caitlyn talked about. It's so intense. Yeah, I had a lot of health challenges after my dad passed away, and I ended up gaining about 50 pounds. just in that grieving process. I felt so sick all the time, just wasn't able to do the things in life that made me happy, which just really made everything worse. But I eventually, when things started to clear up a little bit, I just really tried to nurture my body. I really tried to use medicine as food, food as medicine. The first goal I made was, I'm going to eat fresh food today. I'm not going to change anything else. I'm just going to eat a couple things of fresh food. So maybe I'm going to eat an apple today. And then I think that my body really responded to the nourishment, and just, I really was mindful with it. Like, I'm treating my body with compassion right now, because your body will say, I want sugar, I want comfort food, I want maybe an addictive substance, is how some people will react to this. I think that's really normal, but you have to understand the chemical imbalance that grief introduces. And I think that a way to help you navigate that is by nurturing the body. I mean, being able to say, I know this is what you think you need. This is not what you need. And I'm going to give you what you need, and I love you. Let's take it like that.
Yeah, I love that. I love the self-compassion that you're both talking about. And it's I think it's really, really good for people to hear, and especially young people, and I like the idea that there are no shoulds. It just is what it is, right?
Yeah.
And you find practicing compassion towards yourself is a pretty amazing gift.
Yeah.
So here's something that I've been thinking about. I wanted to ask both of you this. And Hannah, I'll ask you first, and then Caitlyn, I'd like you to answer from your perspective. Because Hannah, your husband Preston met your dad. And I'd like you to speak a little bit about the support that he has been through that process. And then Caitlyn, your fiance Jason did not meet your mom. And I'd like to hear from you how you bring her into his awareness. How do you share her with him? And Hannah, how has Preston been able to support you?
Well, Preston has major golden retriever energy. He's just really loyal, sweet, faithful, good. He's just sunshine, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that our relationship was sunshine during that time. I think that a lot of people want to hear, oh, because I had Preston, I was just fine. Everything was okay. He gave me a hug and then everything went away. Seriously, a relationship will not fix grief. It doesn't have the power to do that, because grief will do what it needs to do anyway. And so, yes, of course, he was a comfort to me. Of course, he was a bright spot in my life, but also getting married and moving in together also introduced more change into my life. And that came with challenges. And so I think that I try to be really real about how difficult our first year was because of this really intense grief. And so I think that it's normal when you have a committed relationship for that relationship to really change with the grief. And I think with time, you get to decide if that's for the best. But ultimately, that was for us, I think, because we had made promises with God. When we were both pointing each other towards Christ, that's when our relationship became healing for me. And then there was times that we weren't following that, when we would not be patient with each other and we weren't forgiving with each other. And the feelings I was feeling with grief just got worse. And so I think that you just have to be careful with the fairy tale approach. Love is a fairy tale. I love being married to him. He's absolutely wonderful and kind and consistent. But that didn't mean that my grief was not going to be there. And he did get to know my dad. And that is a huge blessing that I get to experience that Caitlyn doesn't. And I am really aware of that when I get to ask questions like, what do you remember about my dad? Or do you remember when he did this? Or what do you think my dad would say? He does have an answer for those things. And I'm truly grateful for that.
Thank you, Hannah. I appreciate that. So that's a heavy, you had a heavy experience there with Lisa because you were dating somebody pretty seriously. And he knew your mom and had all of that, interaction. And yet that relationship was not good for you ultimately.
Yeah. And that is something that I wanted to dive in. I liked that Hannah talked about the fairy tale approach because there was a brief moment. I'm thinking of how to talk about this. There was a brief moment after she passed away that we were going to move forward with getting married. And there was a piece of me that wanted to believe in that fairy tale. Like God put him in my life at just the right time that he could meet my mom right before she passed away. So like at least he knew her and now he's here to support me through this grief. Like he, and I will not deny that God does that God does prepare people. He does prepare experiences to help you to ease in, to lift your load. But, and I was so grateful for his family and I was grateful for the service that he did render me. And he was like my first boyfriend, like ever. So I had a lot of firsts with him. Like he was my first kiss and he was very sweet and he was a good man. But there were things that I did not feel at peace about in our relationship and my family. Again, we all acknowledged the great service that he did to me and that he was there for me. We were so grateful for that. But also my family did see some things that they didn't feel like was the best fit for me, in lack of better terms. And
that
so
would have been normal to your age and experiences, right? If nothing had happened to your mom and you brought somebody home, and no matter what a great person, sometimes things aren't a right match, right?
yeah.
But then that when somebody passes away and you're grieving, it adds a layer of complexity to it.
Yeah.
Which is why I what Hannah was saying is really, really poignant, that the fairy tale itself is not the solution to grief.
Yeah.
And so I feel like you're underscoring this.
Yeah. And I feel like there was this desire to be beyond the grief. Like I felt like if I got married, I would have this happy thing to look forward to and my situation would change. And even like my environment, my physical environment, like I would move, I would get married, I would have this other family to support me to go to on Sunday, and I wouldn't be stuck anymore. Like I wouldn't be in this grief. I really wanted to turn the page. Like the desire was there and we had dated for a while. So it was at that point also in the relationship that we either needed to break up or we needed to get married. And like decisions needed to be made. And so prayed about it. I even got a blessing from Hannah's husband and we talked about things. And in that blessing, Preston said, like, you know what to do. You've been taught, you know what you need to do. And afterwards, Preston never met my mom, but he went, is your mom spunky? Like he used that exact word. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, I think I felt her. And I was like, I think she's here too. And so long story short, we ended up breaking up and I felt so bad. I felt so bad for this boy because he was there through like my darkest days and he had really poured himself into this and like, he was a good boy, but
well, and maybe
I had to do it.
Maybe what was compassion had felt like true love, right? Because it was compassion, it was kindness, but that's not necessarily the same thing as the person that you should be with. So how was it different with Jason?
Yeah, I one more thing on that story is that one of my professors that again I really do respect, he was talking to me and he says we do not make decisions when we're emotional. And so a lot of people have variations of this quote, like don't make decisions until it's daylight. Don't do anything rash until X, Y, or Z. And basically, you do not want to make a decision to get married, or especially a life-altering decision, whether it's to like go on a mission or buy a house or get married or have children from a place of weakness, of darkness,
or desperation,
or desperation,
or spiritual darkness.
Or spiritual darkness. And like, I had been praying about this decision for so long, like, and it was a lot of back and forth. It was a lot, like, I just never felt true peace with it. I thought I had received answers, but I never felt peaceful. And so, Jason, my now fiance, he's so cute.
They're so good together. He's just such a great guy.
Yeah.
I adore him.
He is your person.
I remember saying to Hannah when I broke up with my first boyfriend, I remember saying, maybe I have to go through this confusion right now to know one day what the right answer is going to feel like. And with Jason, he's not perfect. I'm not perfect. There have been, like we're dating long distance right now because he's in school on the other side of the country. Like it hasn't been the most convenient relationship, but I will say it's always felt right. Like pretty much from once we decided to start dating, like I just knew that even if he broke up with me at some point, that I was never going to regret dating him because I enjoyed it so much and I learned so much. And he was just such a great person to date. What was your question in concerns to Jason? Oh, how did
how do you introduce your mom to Jason?
Yeah. And so so on my dating profile, I had a picture of like my family when I came home from my mission. So my mom was present. And then I had a picture from my dad's wedding, which happened within the following year. My mom passed away. And so I had my step siblings in there and my stepmom. And so Jason, when he was looking at my profile, he kind of connected some dots without there being anything there. But he still, when we met and we first started talking about our families, he kind of was like, okay, so you've talked a lot about your dad and like your stepmom, but like, what about your mom? He just brought that question up. And I just said, oh, she passed away, about a year ago. And all he said was, oh, what do you miss about her? Or he said something like, tell me about her. And that was like an immediate green flag for me because like Hannah said, he didn't say, how did she pass away? Because I had been on a lot of dates up to that point where people or boys my age, they would get uncomfortable and I don't blame them. It's a new topic for them, but they would just be like, oh, how you doing with that? Or like, I'm sorry. And then they would just get this look of like absolute fear in their face. And I just appreciate that Jason, he actually had lost a brother growing up. And so he was familiar with grief and he just allowed me to talk about her. And he'd be like, what do you miss about her? And so I was just able to talk about her. And then throughout our dating, we're still working on that, to be honest. Like Jason tells me all the time, like, I wish I could see more pictures or I wish I could see more videos. Like, I want to know what her voice sounds like. But every now and then, like, he'll just ask me, like, so tell me about your mom. Like, he just likes hearing stories. And he says, like, I'm looking forward to meeting her one day, like, and I'm like, I do too. Like, and in a weird way, like, I feel like they have a good connection. And I don't know how to explain it other than this one night we were just talking about life and what my mom taught me from living her life and what Jason was experiencing in his life. And I just felt like if my mom was here on earth, like, one, she would absolutely adore Jason, but two, they would be able to like really like connect on a lot of things that they had learned in their life. And I just felt like my mom is aware of Jason and is aware of who he is to me, and like tender mercies that I feel like I get that remind me of my mom. Like when I see flamingos, I think of my mom. It's a long story, but that's just associated with my mom. And like Jason sees flamingos now.
Oh,
Like, and I don't know
wow.
if it's selective attention, but like they pop up for Jason too now, and he thinks of my mom, or he thinks
I
of me,
love that.
and thus
Yeah.
thinks of my mom. But like, I know that my mom knows, and that she's aware, and we're still working on that. But I think like, yeah, talking, sharing stories, looking at pictures, and just talking every now and then,
I
it's
love that.
it's good.
I love that. So, looking back, can you identify anything that helped you prepare for what you both ended up going through, losing a parent? Anything spiritually, emotionally that helped you?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways I wasn't prepared. I think between Caitlyn and I, Caitlyn has always been the very spiritually centered person, and that is something that she has provided me in the time that I've known her, is always grounding me to Jesus Christ. And I can't say that I had really done the work to make that happen. And so I think I had love for God. I think I knew that I was a daughter of God, but I don't think I talked to him enough. I don't think that I spoke with him enough. And I could tell because there were times when I really needed to reach out to a heavenly Father, and it felt a little unfamiliar to me. The process was a little unfamiliar, even though I was even raised in a religious household. That's not necessarily something that I had done a lot of. And so that's been my work now, is how do I find God's voice in all of this pain? And it's been a super joyous journey. It's been all connected to my dad's memory. It's I am in a position where I have two heavenly fathers, and that's really cool. That's really cool to discover them at the same time. And I have to catch myself: am I talking to my heavenly father or am I talking to my dad? And I have to remind myself I need to talk to my heavenly father, and he'll help me stay connected to my dad. But I think that because of that, I've grown a very specific relationship with my heavenly father.
Thank you for sharing that. I love that.
I think genuinely being able to, like, sorry, in my brain, I do think having that spiritual foundation was so important. That was the first thing that comforted me. I was in the room when my mom passed, and my little brother and I were the only ones present. And when my mom took her last breath, I had to stare at my little brother, who was definitely a mama's boy, and be able to tell him that things were going to be okay. And in that moment, you cannot lie, you cannot bluff. And I had this moment like, is this true? Like, have what I've been taught true? And I remember this line from the one of the study manuals we use as missionaries in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And it said, the Book of Mormon is the cornerstone of our religion. And I remember that was such a strange line, because I was like, no, I should be remembering something about Jesus Christ, and I mean, the Book of Mormon is a testament of Jesus Christ. But because I had so many powerful experiences for myself and also witnessing it in the lives of others, that when we draw close to the words of Christ, like, our lives change and we are comforted throughout our lives. I could not deny that that book is a testament of miracles, is a testament of God's involvement in the world, and is a testament that Jesus Christ lives, and that he loves all people, and that he reaches out to people in their lives, even today. and that he shares his love and his sacrifice with them, and that it is through him that not only can we be with God again, we can be with our families again, but we can feel them while we're here on earth. And I remember pulling my brother into a hug and just saying, it's going to be okay. Because when push came to shove, I knew that that spiritual foundation and my testimony did not fail me. And I think throughout the grieving process, even now, because things come up still, like planning a wedding without your mom, things come up still, that I know that Heavenly Father, like when I feel like people or my family members, we all grieve differently. And going through grief sometimes can feel very isolating and very lonely, because sometimes you don't know what you need and you wish other people were more understanding or more compassionate or could say the right thing or even behave differently. That when I would pray to Heavenly Father, I just always appreciated that he would just tell me, like, it's okay. It's okay to say that this is hard. It's okay to mourn. It's okay to be sad. He was never dismissive of the experiences I was having. He just let me have them. And like, but also said, like, I'm going to send you tender mercies. And that's something that I'm really big on. There's a talk from David A. Bednar that goes more into that. It's called Tender Mercies of the Lord. And it is a huge way that I see God's love in my life. And I would keep a little journal on my phone of tender mercies of the Lord or things that would remind me of my mom. So whether it was seeing flamingos that day, or I remember one day I walked out on BYU campus and there were cherry blossoms. And for some reason, I have a cherry blossom emoji by my mom in my phone. I don't know why, but I just had that. And I just felt my mom when I was looking at these cherry blossoms, and I would write down my experiences, feeling mom or feeling heaven. And my last comment on this is a lot of people go to the temple to feel their loved ones. And that was something that I wanted to do too. But when I first got endowed, before my mom passed away, my stake president advised me, like, no matter what reason you're going to the temple, like, always go to the temple and focus on Christ first. And I thought that was interesting advice, because I was like, duh, like, that's the whole reason you go to the temple, is because of Jesus Christ. But I feel like there is this temptation sometimes in our worship to draw close to spiritual things so we can feel our loved ones. And the times I've gone to the temple just thinking I want to feel my mom, it hasn't necessarily happened. But when I reminded myself to focus on Jesus Christ, and what he's done in my relationship with Jesus Christ, that's when I felt my loved ones the most. And I think that's interesting, because even on a feeling level or an emotional level, it is only through Christ that we can be with those people, you know? And so being in a place where you can have the Spirit, being in a place where you're strengthening your relationship with Jesus Christ, that's going to allow you to heal, to feel peace, or to even feel your loved one. So
Thank you for sharing that. And I feel like you anticipated my final question, which is, what does it mean to grieve well? And I feel like you've answered that in such an eloquent way. So I'll direct that final question at Hannah. What do you think it means to grieve well?
I think that grief, among a lot of things, is a change. And we're not always good at handling change. It's not something that we are necessarily comfortable with a lot of the time. And I think to grieve well means to embrace the changes that will happen and that are happening, that have happened. I think that's what resiliency is all about, is understanding that we all grieve. We all grieve something, because things are always changing. We like the familiar, but there is something that will always be familiar, and that's God's love. So I think that out of anything, understanding that through the change, find the constant, and that's God.
I love that. I think that's perfect. Oh, thank you so much, girls. Thank you for sharing. Wonderful, lovely thoughts. Thanks for being good friends to each other.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you for raising such a good daughter and being a good friend too. You've been a good friend as well.
I'm proud of you both for having gone through something so difficult and seeing you thriving. I'm grateful to see that. All right. Well, thank you again.